I always thought the orchard would outlive me. My father used to say that if you treat the trees right, they'll remember you. He believed the roots knew who planted them. And when the wind rustled through the branches, that was the land's way of whispering back its gratitude. For 3 generations, the Cartwrights lived here on this stretch of land. 50 acres of soil, sweat, and survival. My grandfather, Henry, was the first to till this ground. My father, Walt, expanded it. And me. I kept it alive long enough to watch it shrink, not from rot, not from drought, but from something far worse, bureaucracy in a pantsuit. HOAs. You never see them coming. At first, it was just a flyer. It arrived folded neatly in my mailbox. Glossy paper, stock photos of smiling families walking golden retrievers through manufactured paradise. Ridgeway Pines welcomes you. The banner read, like I had signed up for a country club. I tossed it in the trash. A week later came a follow-up. Community Vision Board invites you to our growth meeting. Still, I ignored it. I wasn't part of their development. I didn't pay dues. I didn't even live on their map. My land sat just beyond the edge of the Ridgeway subdivision, buffered by a slope and a line of pines older than their HOA charter. My house stood modest, white siding, porch swing, barn out back, but it held more history than every prefabricated home across the fence. They saw that fence as a suggestion. I saw it as a line in the dirt. Then came the letter. This one was formal. Envelope, printed return address, HOA letterhead. No more smiley faces or invitation wording. This time, it read like a summons. They were proposing to rezone part of my orchard for public recreational use, a fenced-in green space for community benefit. In other words, a dog park. On my land. I remember standing in my kitchen when I read it. My hands went cold. There were coffee rings on the table, a cracked ceramic mug I'd glued together years ago, and sunlight slicing through the lace curtains. But none of it felt real. Not anymore. They weren't asking. They were telling. See, 30 years ago, the HOA didn't exist. Just a few scattered homes, most of them built by old folks who'd lived in the county forever. When Ridgeway Pines broke ground, my father made a handshake deal with the developers. They could tap into our water line for a few of the new homes, just enough to keep lawns green and flower beds alive. A gentleman's agreement. No papers. Just trust. That water still ran. And now those same developers, or their bureaucratic descendants, thought they could plant a fence through my orchard and claim it for the community. A few days after the letter, they came with clipboards. Surveyors in khakis and sunglasses, walking the tree lines like they owned the place. One of them spray-painted a neon pink X on an old apple tree. That tree was mine. I had planted it the year my daughter was born. She used to climb it barefoot and sit in the crook like it was a throne. That tree had a name. They gave it a target. When I asked what they were doing, the lead guy said, "We're marking off proposed boundary lines for community development." Proposed by who? I asked. He smiled with teeth that didn't mean it. The HOA. It's already in motion. I told him to leave. He didn't argue. But his smile didn't leave either. It lingered like a warning. Judith Holloway. The name alone made my blood pressure rise. Chairwoman of the Ridgeway Pines HOA. Wore oversized sunglasses like she was hiding from the paparazzi, even on cloudy days. Her idea of neighborliness was a letter in your mailbox and a fine on your windshield. The kind of woman who saw rules not as guidelines, but as weapons. I went to their office, if you could call it that. A converted townhouse near the edge of the subdivision, with a brass plaque and a fake fern on the porch. I waited in my truck for over an hour before she arrived. She stepped out of a silver Lexus wearing a silk scarf and heels that didn't belong in a rural zip code. I introduced myself. She already knew my name. "Mr. Cartwright," she said, like she'd rehearsed it. I asked her to stop. Politely, at first. I explained the history. The well. The orchard. The years my family spent keeping this land alive. She handed me a packet, project timeline and key benefits. Then she said the 4 words I'll never forget. It's for the community. I told her it wasn't her community to take. She just smiled and walked past me into her office. They didn't wait for my answer. That weekend, the brush clearing started. Tractors hummed through the morning fog like an approaching storm. I watched from the porch with a thermos of coffee and rage burning behind my eyes. Men in neon vests began marking rows. Spray paint scarred the grass. Someone knocked over my hose reel and acted like I was the one in the way. They didn't see me as a neighbor. They saw me as an obstacle. But here's the thing about the Cartwrights. We don't move easy. And we don't break clean. That night, while they slept in their vinyl-clad homes and dreamed of swing sets and HOA barbecues, I walked out back, past the barn, through the overgrown patch behind the chicken coop, down to the old well. Not the new one, the old one. The one my grandfather dug by hand, before the county lines changed, before any of this madness ever took root. The one the HOA had been leaching water from for 30 years. They thought I'd forgotten. They were wrong. I opened the hatch. The cold hit my face like a memory. I reached for the shutoff valve. And paused. Once I turned it, there would be no going back. No more gentle nudges. No more polite conversations. Just consequences. Then I thought of the pink X. The sound of roots being ripped. The silence in Judith's voice when she said, "For the community." I turned the valve. The pump let out a soft groan. And stopped. The next morning, Ridgeway Pines woke up to brown lawns and sputtering sinks. But that wasn't the real beginning. That was just the warning shot. Because once you take from a man's land, you don't just steal property. You wake up something deeper. Something older. And now the fight had begun. You can tell a lot about a person by how they handle losing control. For most of the HOA board, that loss came like a slow leak, a little sputter here, a little pressure drop there. At first, it was just confused emails, light complaints, murmurs at the mailbox. Nothing that couldn't be brushed off with a, "We're looking into it." But by day 3, Ridgeway Pines was bone dry. No water in the fountains. No pressure in the lines. Sprinklers coughed like smokers and died in the middle of the night. Toilets wouldn't flush. Dishwashers quit. Kids with grass-stained socks complained that their bathwater smelled like rust and wasn't enough to cover their knees. That's when Judith Holloway cracked. She didn't call me, not at first. That would have meant acknowledging I held the cards. Instead, she sent a man in a tan suit with a clipboard and an attitude, like he expected me to apologize before he even rang the bell. I let him stand there. Watched from inside as he shifted his weight, checked his watch, then knocked again. When he finally turned to leave, I stepped out and said just loud enough for him to hear, "Problem with the plumbing?" He turned, startled, cleared his throat. "Mr. Cartwright. My name is Peter Langston. I'm acting on behalf of the Ridgeway Pines HOA in a..." "Stop," I said. "You want something, speak plain." He blinked. "There's been a service disruption. We believe a key valve connected to the original shared well has been closed," I said. "Yes," he admitted. "Accidentally, we hope." I walked down the steps, stopped a few feet from him and stared. "You think this is an accident?" He swallowed hard. "If we can coordinate access, we're prepared to." "You ever dig a well?" I asked. "What? Ever drop a shovel into hard earth in the middle of July, when the dirt's cracked and the sun bakes your neck for 12 straight hours?" My grandfather did. My father did. I helped dig that pipe trench when I was 12 years old. Busted my knuckles on stone. Had to siphon standing water out with an old fuel hose. So don't come here with a clipboard and call this an accident. You're drinking from a legacy you didn't earn. And that legacy just went dry. He took a step back. "I'll Inform the board. You do that. That same evening, someone threw a brick through my mailbox. No note. No signature. Just a smashed tin box and shattered gravel sprayed across the driveway. The message was clear. Escalation had begun. But they weren't ready for what came next. You see, I didn't just shut off the water. I started talking. That night, I called Maggie. She was Ridgway's memory, the neighbor everyone forgot was watching. We sat on the porch under a quiet moon and I told her everything. She didn't interrupt. Didn't frown. Just nodded slowly and said, "They always thought they were untouchable." The next day, Maggie brought Dana. Dana had lived here longer than anyone on the board. Used to grow zucchini the size of baseball bats. She brought a clipboard and a petition. "Want to stop him," she said. "We need signatures." By sundown, we had 15. The day after, 53. And they weren't just names. They were stories. People angry about fines, fees, threats. One woman told me the HOA charged her $200 because her son parked his bike on the wrong side of the porch. "We thought it was just how things worked," she whispered. "But now we remember how it used to be." The tide was turning. But Judith wasn't done. By the end of the week, the HOA sent an official cease and desist. It was printed on thick paper, gold foil letterhead, legal threats dressed in velvet. They accused me of deliberate sabotage and endangering the welfare of the Ridgway community. I read it once. Then I lit my fire pit and fed it to the flames. Because some fights aren't fought with paperwork. They're fought with memory. And steel. That night, I added 3 new locks to the valve shed. Reinforced the door. Set up trail cams. Someone had been snooping near the orchard. Left boot prints in the soft earth near the chicken wire. They didn't realize yet. I wasn't trying to win fast. I was trying to make them bleed slow. And bleed they did. The online reaction started small. A local news segment with a headline, "HOA faces backlash after local man shuts off shared water line." They blurred my face. Called me James C. and gave me the label of concerned landowner. But the internet doesn't care about anonymity. Within hours, the clip spread. A Reddit post titled "HOA gets destroyed by old farmer who owns the water" hit the front page. Comments exploded. Based. King behavior. Is this guy single? Someone made a TikTok remix with dramatic music and zoomed in shots of the well. Another account uploaded drone footage of the orchard, lush, untouched, contrasted with Ridgway's crispy lawns. And then, the nickname hit. The Thirst Avenger. I didn't ask for it. But I wore it like armor. Because with every meme, every comment, every angry HOA Facebook post trying to set the record straight, they were playing my game. And I was winning. A week after the news broke, Judith finally spoke. She held a special community meeting in the Ridgway clubhouse. Really just a rental space near the tennis courts. She looked tired. The video leaked within an hour. She stood behind a podium, wrapped in a scarf, her voice strained. This community must stand together in times of misinformation and emotional response. Someone in the crowd shouted, "How's your grass, Judith?" Laughter broke out. Someone else held up a bottle of Dasani and yelled, "Cartwright sends his regards." Judith tried to regain control. The board is working tirelessly to restore water service. No, Cartwright worked tirelessly. You just stole it. They couldn't stop the flood. The HOA was cracking from the inside. Board members started skipping meetings. Resignations popped up on the Ridgway bulletin. Dana's petition crossed 200 names. Maggie printed flyers and stapled them to telephone poles. And then, like all bad systems, Ridgway tried to cheat. It happened late one night. I saw the lights near the rear fence. Flashlights bobbing, boots crunching through the brush. I grabbed the old 12-gauge and walked quiet as mist until I was 20 feet from the valve shed. 3 figures, dressed in black, tools in hand. They didn't see me until I spoke. "You sure you want to finish what Judith started?" They froze. "You're trespassing," I said. "You're messing with infrastructure. And you're standing on Cartwright soil." One of them ran. The other two dropped their tools and followed. I didn't chase. I just recorded. Uploaded the footage the next day with the caption, "They came for my water." I let them leave with their pride. The video hit 3 million views by morning. There's a strange kind of quiet that follows a storm. Not peace, not calm, but something more tense. Like the earth itself is waiting to see what's still standing. That's what Ridgeway Pines felt like by the third week. The lawns were dead. HOA meetings were cancelled. Half the board had resigned. And every day, someone new dropped by my gate to leave a pie, a folded note, or just a nod of respect they'd never dared to offer before. But Judith? She went dark. Word was she'd locked herself in that big beige two-story she bought with HOA fees and a second husband. No one had seen her since the meeting meltdown. Her Lexus sat in the driveway, untouched, tires gathering pollen and judgment. Meanwhile, I just kept walking my orchard. The trees that survived were sprouting strong again. Not because of me, but because no one was tearing them up for a dog park anymore. The pink flags were gone, replaced with hand-carved wood stakes where I'd started planting new saplings. Names carved into each one. Henry, Walt, Maggie, Dana. One I left blank. Just a question mark. That one was for the future. And still, the HOA tried to wrest control. They filed another injunction, this time claiming I was hoarding water during an infrastructure emergency. Their lawyer even said I was creating civil unrest by refusing to share a public utility. But they had one problem. It wasn't public. And now, thanks to Leah, the blogger who'd driven hours to tell the story, half the state knew it. She'd gone viral twice. Her series, The Man Who Shut Off the HOA, became a multi-part podcast. Sponsors jumped on board. News outlets reached out. And somewhere between episode 5 and 6, someone dug up the original agreement between my father and the developers who built Ridgeway. It wasn't a contract. It was a letter. Handwritten. Signed by my dad and the original Ridgeway contractor. It simply read, "James Walt Cartwright grants access to water supply to Ridgeway Pines under condition of neighborly conduct and mutual respect." 2 sentences. No legal loopholes. No obligations. A favor. A favor that ended the day they painted pink XS on my trees. The county reviewed it. The judge read it out loud during the hearing. Then folded the paper and said, "This doesn't obligate Mr. Cartwright to anything. Case dismissed." Just like that. But the real revenge didn't happen in court. It happened at the ballot box. Because while the HOA fought legal battles, the people of Ridgeway fought back where it counted. They voted. Dana ran for HOA chairwoman. Maggie organized town halls. Alan, the guy who once fined me for a crooked fence post, started knocking on doors asking real questions. When did we stop being neighbors? And Ridgeway answered. They showed up. Not in golf carts or yoga pants, but in work boots and jeans, with coffee mugs and ballpoint pens. One by one, they filled out paper ballots in a community center that used to be a hollow shell of HOA propaganda. Judith didn't show. Didn't matter. By 9 p.m., the board was flipped. Every old member voted out. Every open position filled with someone who had, at one point or another, stood in my driveway with an apology in their eyes. The very next morning, Maggie came by. She handed me an envelope. Inside was a certificate. Honorary Steward of Ridgeway Pines Water Legacy. Signed by every new board member. At the bottom, someone had scrawled, "No more dog parks without asking." I framed it. Hung it in the well house. But the best part. The orchard came back. Not all of it. Some trees never recovered. Some wounds don't heal perfectly. But enough of it stood. Enough to remember. Enough to remind. And every spring, I added a few more saplings. People volunteered to help now. Kids came by on weekends, dirt on their faces, learning how to plant something and watch it grow. Families brought lunches. Dana brought lemonade. Alan built a new fence line, straight this time. And Maggie. She brought that pie. Only this time, it didn't taste like guilt. It tasted like home. Then one day, late June, just after the first real rain, a truck pulled into the driveway. I didn't recognize it. Plain white. No plates. Just dust and purpose. A woman stepped out. Brown boots. Faded jeans. A denim shirt rolled up to the elbows. She didn't say her name. Just walked up, looked at the orchard, and said, "Your grandfather dug that well, didn't he?" I nodded. My grandmother lived down the road when he did. Said she could hear the metal ringing on rock for weeks. Said she always meant to thank him. She handed me a wooden box. Inside was a folded photo. Old. Curled at the corners. Faded from time. It showed my grandfather, shirtless and lean, standing beside the well rig, grinning like the devil himself after conquering the sun. Scribbled on the back. "He gave us water. You gave us back our voice." I looked up. The truck was gone. Never saw her again. But I kept the photo. Pinned it beside the certificate in the well house. Because that was legacy. Not some HOA rulebook. Not a fake smile on a glossy flyer. Legacy was sweat, memory, and roots in the ground. Ridgeway changed after that. The lawns didn't get greener overnight. But the people did. The new board slashed fees. Held real meetings. Voted publicly. Rescinded half a dozen fines from the past year alone. And Judith. She sold her house and moved to Arizona. The only thing she left behind was a faded metal sign that once read, HOA headquarters. Someone crossed out the O and wrote hell instead. It stayed that way for months. One evening, I walked the fence line, listening to the cicadas buzz and the trees sway. And I realized something. I hadn't won by shutting off water. I'd won by turning something else on. Memory. Community. Respect. Things they forgot when they built sidewalks over fields and installed fences between hearts. I didn't turn the water back on. Not for the HOA. They rerouted their system. Dug new lines. Paid tens of thousands to run infrastructure they could have had for free if they just knocked on my door like neighbors. But I kept my shed unlocked. No padlock. No chains. Just a sign on the door. Respect the well, and the well will respect you. It's still there. And every spring, we plant something new. Because revenge doesn't always look like a courtroom win or a viral clip. Sometimes, revenge looks like a tree that outlives the people who tried to tear it down. And that's the kind of revenge that lasts.